Can you believe that it's already November? Like, it just seems so crazy. Like, summer flew, fall is falling, but I live in Southern California, so the weather is still like summer adjacent, summer-esque. Anywho, I feel like instead of the leaves changing color and evolving and maturing to that next stage of the cycle, I feel like the last 2 months of fall, so September and October, I feel like internally I've been going through some changes and some of my leaves are changing. Still look the same on the outside, but on the inside, those green leaves are now changing to those autumnal colors like red and orange and yellow and brown. Um, I read 15 books in the last 2 months, which is a lot. Um, but I'm definitely having fun noticing little themes that pop up during the month or the last couple months, I guess. And it's fun in retrospective to see where the patterns are, right? So, like, which books kind of hit this itch or this mark, and then what books did I intentionally set a pattern or a theme because I was feeling a certain type of way. So, this season of my life, there were three real big categories that stood out. So, the first one is internal excavation, I want to call it. Looking inward, that deep reflection caused by a book that makes you really think and that you really resonate with. The next category, I would say, is more intentional. I read like a host of thrillers and mystery books, and it was the lead up to Halloween, and I feel like that's always like a spooky time, and when I really want to put my like detective cap on and just like those bingeable thrillers that sometimes have an amazing villain that you almost root for in some weird way, that you want them to be bad so that it makes the story better. Um, and then the last category is a few books that really kind of defied genre. Let's just say they're like genre bending or like genre breakers. I don't know. They broke the genre. But those few books really kind of were a little bit chaotic and like all over the place. I can't really define them, but I really enjoyed them and I want to talk about them. So I'll go ahead and start. Thanks for being here. Okay, so as a disclaimer, the 6 books in my internal excavation category, they're all bangers. Like, they make me want to sing a song called Let's Talk About Books, Baby. And I do want to talk about these books. So the first up, I am holding it, is Lighter by Young Pueblo. And this is this is a nonfiction book. And I'm a little bit biased because I love Young Pueblo. I have like every single one of his poetry books. Clarity and Connection is chef's kiss. And then I also love The Way Forward, and I actually have it on loan to a friend because I love it, and I apologize to them for, all the dog-eared pages, but it was really good, and, that aside. So the premise of this book is kind of more memoir and like collective wisdom from young Pueblo and his life experience, and enabling the reader to kind of let go of the past, stop thinking about the future so intensely, to focus more on the present and not be so held down by, the past and your future woes, right? Like, we're always a little bit forward thinking, and we're trying to be a little bit more rooted, or at least I'm trying to be a little bit more rooted in the current. So as you might be able to peep from there, there are a few passages that I really liked. I'm just going to read one just so that you can get a taste for what the book is like. So this is from a healing part of the book, and it goes, "Your immediate reaction does not tell you who you are. It is how you decide to respond after the reaction that gives you the real insight into how much you have grown. Your first reaction is your past. Your intentional response is your present." And to me, as somebody who, I feel like as I get older, I'm noticing moments of reactivity. And not to say that I'm like an aggressive, like reactive person. I'm actually pretty calm for the most part. But there are instances where I get so frustrated that you know, it's just that like knee-jerk response, or like a response that doesn't have nuance and is a little bit more black and white, and I'm trying to grow and evolve. And I feel like that's just a taste of like what this book has done for me and might do for you. So I highly recommend you check out Lighter by Young Pueblo if you're looking to excavate the archaeological dig that is your brain. All right, the next up is My Friends by Frederick Bachman. I had read a couple books by Frederick Bachman before, like A Man Called Ove and Anxious People, and I loved A Man Called Ove. I even really found the movie adaptation to be like quite, just like feel good, and even though it's a little bit sad, and if you know, you know. But outside of that, big fan of Bachman. And so I picked up his newest book, and I have to say that it might be one of my favorite books of the year that I read, maybe even ever. It really captures two things very well. So, how artistry evolves over your lifetime, and how creating and exploring your creative is a healthy way to process your emotions and your feelings. And then the second part is how friendships evolve over the span of a lifetime. So how your childhood friendships evolve, and, what it feels like as a teen outcast going through the motions and just trying to survive. And I have to say, like, one of the most like spunky and endearing, but like also really like pretty out there protagonist, Louisa, the main character in this novel. I've never seen anyone like her in a book, and to me it was very heartwarming, and she was weirdly enough this anchor for the friend group in this book that has spanned across a lifetime, especially in the wake of one of their friends passing. And there's a passage in the book that I really like, and I feel like most people can relate, maybe, on some level. Our teenage years have to simultaneously be the brightest light and the darkest depths, because that's how we learn to figure out our horizons. And if that's not true, I don't know what is. Like, when you're a teenager, the world is both your oyster, but it also seems so heavy at times. I know I was like a very stressed out teenager, and trying to get good grades and like please my parents, and then having identity challenges and coming into my own and figuring out my identity and my queerness. And sometimes you can feel, even if you're loved and supported and you have friends, sometimes you can feel so alone. And this book captures that very well. So I highly recommend. It is a little sad, but definitely fantastic. All right, the next book is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jadrowski. And I have to say, disclaimer, this might be my favorite book that I read all year, and it might crack like one of my favorite books that I read ever. And what it does well, first of all, I wrote an article on Substack titled The Sad Boy Starter Pack, and this was one of the 3 books that was in that. And for many reasons. One, it's a queer romance book, but in a not so fairy tale romance kind of way. The 2 main characters are living in Poland in the 80s, and it's at a very political and charged time. And so it's very much the romance and the yearning that, you want to see thrive, but you like know deep down in your soul that it's not going to work out just because of the times. And without spoiling it too much, because that's all in the back cover, I will say that this author does an amazing job of capturing that gay yearning and that, that longing to be close to someone intimately, and also still kind of like weigh the margins of like where you're at politically and in a country that isn't really safe for everyone and is progressive but regressive, and how even though there's a lot of turmoil and unfortunate events, that some beauty can thrive from, the cracks in the pavement. All right, next up is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. And it was my first like introductory Ocean Vuong kind of, like I've only ever seen interviews and was really interested in reading one of his books. And this one didn't disappoint. I will say that without sounding too negative, I think it was overly hyped. But I do think it is a very impactful book. I wrote a little bit about it on Substack in another book in the Sad Boys starter pack. But this one really touches on, the generational trauma of being an immigrant child and also finding your queer identity, and also like a DL relationship. So I don't want to like spoil too much, but one of the things that Ocean does well, we're on a first name basis, one of the things he does well is capturing those moments with such intensity. Like, for example, I think I like pegged one here. So a phrase we're partially familiar with just because of, literature. To be or not to be, that is the question. A question, yes, but not a choice. Mic drop. Like, it's insane to me how someone can just flip a phrase that you've heard time and time again and just like throw it on its head, I don't even know if that's the right phrasing, but hopefully you get the gist. And I feel like this book really made me nostalgic for those fleeting, intense moments of love when it first starts. And even though it's a little bit troublesome when you first start dating someone to decide if it's lust or love, this book captures that weighing the scales very well. Also, I will say it's a little traumatic, like the interactions between the author, main character really, and the mother is a little intense. And this whole book is written really to his mother, and it was a little rough, and that's probably why it's like not my favorite book, and I think it's overhyped a little bit, but it still scratches a particular itch, and I would read it again, if not for the prose. What do we need? More queer stories. When do we need them? Now. And this is The Safekeep by Yael van der Wooden. This was a pick for the most recent quarter of my friend group's book club, and it very much is sapphic, queer love vibes, but also with like a historical fiction element. There is a very major plot twist in the middle of the book that you probably won't see coming. I know I didn't see coming, but some people are more well read than I am, and that's okay. If you're really interested in a book that you think it's going to be one thing and then it like does a 180 and it's an entirely different thing, this is for you. It's not super heavy on the romance. It's more like, if I could attribute it to any trope, and this is doing a disservice, it would be more enemies to lovers. But also, there's really deep conversations of integrity and materialism and, when things are taken from you and what survivorship looks like. This book really captures things like that. This made me feel really sad. And like when you talk about like World War II era things and like post World War II, what that looked like, it is always very heavy and sad because, like, you know, the entire world went to war and there's only destruction and displacement in its wake. And this really highlights that emotion and it really provoked it within me. So it's a little bit deep, it's a little bit romantic, but if you like those things and you want to reflect inward about, you know, just your place in the world, this is a great place to start. The last but not least book in my 6 internal excavating, you know, digging and archaeologicaling. That's not a word. But the last one is The Story of a New Name by Elena Ferrante. And this is the second book in the Neapolitan Quartet. And it's a fatty. But I did get to read it in Italy on my trip that I took at the end of September and early October. And there was like some spiritual enlightenment or something in the air that came about when reading Ferrante in the fall in Italy. Like, it was very spectacular. And while I wasn't in Naples, where this takes place, I was still, it felt special to me to be Italian, reading Italian author in Italy in the fall. So that aside, this kind of picks up where My Brilliant Friend ends, and it's Lila and Elena Greco, and they're really starting to, you know, get older. Lila's married now. She's got some domestic violence issues. That's nothing new if you read the first book. But for those who haven't read this series or this book, this really captures what female friendships look like over the course of your childhood to adolescence and early adulthood, and what it looks like when crossing like the thresholds of life, like marriage and graduating from school, and, you know, what is my future gonna look like, but also like put those woes that we feel every day and in every point in the timeline of life, but make it historical, like post World War II-ish Italy. So it's great. And I just want to say that, hold on one second. So if you know, you know, but one of my social media sphere friends and comrade in books, Petia, gave me some cute little some cute little takeaways from you know, the lovely Ferrante verse, and I'm very appreciative of it, and they kind of were very special. So that's it. All right, let's get to the mysteries and thriller segment. And you can't start it without The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secrets by Frida McFadden. So I'm kind of going to lump them together, just make it a little bit easier for the audience. You. So, oh my god, I'm being a silly goose today. But The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret really follow this maid. Not a maid by choice, but Millie is many things. This first one, The Housemaid, really follows Millie and this contention with Nina, her boss, and the wife in the, you know, the main house that she's a maid for, and her husband who rulings out. But this has very much like the blueprint of Gone Girl, where it's that mic drop moment in the middle and everything is not as it seems. And this really scratches like a particular itch of, you know, bingeable thriller and like can't put it down, and I need to know who's the real villain and how things are going to shake up, and is Millie going to get out of this scotch-free? So if you really like something like that, this is a great book. Also, the movie's coming out soon from when I'm recording this. You may be watching this in the future, who knows? But I always really want to read the book before I go see a movie, because then I can compare and contrast. The second one is a little less straightforward. Like, there's a lot of plot holes in this one, but we love them. It's a little bit more dark. There's a little bit more violence in this one, or assumed violence. There's several mic drop moments and plot twists and turns. Got a little pretzely, um, in this one, but it still had that, that initial thrill that carried over from the first one. And Millie is like extra unhinged and bad at decision making in this one, but she has a little help in this one, and I think that's what made it special. So if you're looking for two bingeable thrillers that are a part of a series and gonna be a movie soon, then read these. If you want a book that will make you want to put security cameras all over your house, then this is that book, A Stranger in the House. I know, very straightforward. So this book really is more of like a domestic thriller, and the central story follows a husband and wife, and then there's also this neighbor that's in the mix, and a mysterious past, and everything that you want in a thriller, and something to just kind of like through, So I will say that I am a little biased. I love Shari Lapina and all of her thrillers. I've read like 3 or 4, and they're always like delightful. Like they're nothing completely new. They follow sometimes like a Gone Girl-esque blueprint, but they have this very like domestic lens in a way that scares you from little everyday things that you're like, oh, well, I do that. And like, nothing bad ever happens to me when I do that. And then like enter this. So if you're looking for a thriller that's, a little bit more of like the homescape, or maybe if you're trying to avoid that, but maybe want to like dabble in the thriller mystery genre, this is a good one. Still on the Shari LaPena train, everyone here is lying. And let me tell you, everyone in this damn book was lying. Like, it centers really on a family. There's a husband, a wife, a son, and a demonic child. Like, this child is literally the Antichrist. Don't want to bias you. Read it for yourself. But this is also in that bingeable thriller category where you're like, I need to keep flipping through. I need to know what's going on. And there's also a neighbor involved. Like there's always a neighbor involved in like domestic thrillers. And when there's like a family in a like quiet, perfect neighborhood, and then they realize that something bad happens and someone goes missing or someone dies or who done it. This is really that. And I really liked this one, if not for the last second of the book, the last page, the last sentence, because the villains get their comeuppance. But you don't know who the villains are. Read it. All right, this book is the definition of cozy mystery, and it is Whiskey Business by Adrian Andover, one of my Instagram friends, and he wrote a book, like a whole book, like amazing. And it's very much like if Gilmore Girls and like small town vibes met like a Glass Onion whodunit, and it's spectacular. So, and it has a lot of heart. Like you just, in a cozy mystery, you want that heart element. And if this doesn't sell you, the name of the town is Hope Mills, Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's a real place. I haven't looked it up, but that just sounds like a place where things are very like fantastical and like special and warm and cozy, and you wouldn't expect a murder or whodunit type situation to happen. So I found that the characters in this really like breathe life into the book. Adrian does a fantastic job of really making the reader just like in the bubble, My English isn't great here. But it really captures the reader's attention, and like you want to just like power through and keep figuring out like, okay, wait, I think it's this person, but it's not. And who I thought it was, it isn't. So who's the villain? Who done it? And why? All right, this last mystery and thriller is The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose, and it's a sequel. So it's a second book in the Molly the Maid series. And Molly is, like, I really loved the first book. I thought it was very special and one of a kind. This one captures some of the magic of Molly's, like, wholesome detective and, like, very particular and, like, OCD and like narrow, spicy ways, and the actual plot of this book was like not as good. And a lot of things felt like forced and like trying to like copy paste the blueprint from the first one. Um, there's also a little bit more backstory on Molly, and I think that's actually kind of the part of the book that I really enjoyed. Um, it's a satisfying mystery, but I will say that it didn't capture the initial spark of the first one. So if you did like the first one, you might like this. If you didn't like the first one, you definitely won't like this. So, a little hot potato, but I like a mystery. What can I say? All right. So, the first book in the genre bending category is The Coin by Yasmin Zahar. And honestly, it feels like this tumultuous ride of this like bougie yet like survivor of a Palestinian woman who is just trying to live her like, you know, her life in New York City, but she's also a teacher and she's educating children, but like not really. It's giving very like Ned Schneebly, but not really Jack Black as a teacher in School of Rock. And add in some like crazy hygienic elements. And it's very much like the unhinged narrator. I mean, look at this cover. Like, this is the woman in the book. But I read this as a part of the Inklings book club, and it was spectacular. And this book does a great job of making the absurd seem reasonable in some way. Like, this woman, not going to spoil too much, but she does a lot of questionable things, and you want to keep reading on. You're just like, okay, it can't get any weirder than this, but it does, and you're gonna want to know how this ends. So I highly encourage you to check it out. Okay, so the next book in the genre bender category is The Dream Hotel by Leila Lalami. And this book is very much the essence of that Black Mirror episode where they're rating things and like you can't do things if you don't have a certain rating, and you can't live in a certain neighborhood if you don't have a certain rating, and that sort of thing. That vibe meets a commentary on ICE detention centers. So like really enmesh the two, and you have this story. It also, like when in the detention center, Sarah, the main character, who gets placed into this detention center from a dream she had, crazy enough, but that whole part of the book really is giving like Orange is the New Black vibes, if you ever watched that series or read that book. And it kind of really goes into her relationships of the other women that are in this holding place, like a prison. It was really not what I expected, and in a great way. Like, I should know by now to have better trust in Read with Jenna and her books, and they never disappoint, and this book did not disappoint. And I kind of buddy read this with a friend, so it made the excitement and the like absurdity of it all pass through a little bit more in conversation than just reading solo. So I highly recommend this. It is definitely like a dystopian nightmare that seems very realistic, like this could happen, but let's hope that it does not. I just remembered I had a microphone, so I apologize for all the weird sounds in the last 14 book descriptions. But, anyways, the last one in the genre bending category is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. And this book really captures like a very interesting and unique dynamic between two friends that met at a boarding school, and now they're adults, and one of them has children, and these children blow up. And by blow up, not with anger, but literally spontaneously combust. This is on the back of the book, so there's no spoilers there. But what is amazing about this book in particular is the storytelling from the friend who's really had it like down on her luck, and she's really trying to navigate her place in the world and like her vocation, her purpose.
and she is comparing herself to this other friend with this beautiful picture perfect life. And I feel like we all get a little trapped in the comparison vortex, like we're always like, especially in social media, we're like, that person has more followers, or their pictures look prettier than mine, or they're more ripped than I am, or whatever. This book really highlights like that comparison between like a close friend and possible enemy. And also, this book does a great job of bringing like the nurture over nature conversation to the forefront. So, this main character, Lillian, the one who's down on her luck, ends up watching the two children who spontaneously combust. And the story ensues, but really at the core of it is showing these children love and really what it means to be a mother figure. And I found it very special and endearing, and it wasn't what I expected from this book. I thought it was going to be like more like spec fic, and that's just where it was, and there's no like deeper digging to be done there. But fantastic. Also, just noticing now, it is a read with Jenna pick. She knows how to pick them.
So there we have it. A great September and October, great start to fall. And I can't wait to see what books I can cram in before the end of the year. Oh my God, I'm like all over. Anyways, hope you have a wonderful reading life. See you next time.